Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny, the Snow White.
Yeah, I went out yesterday and Dave couldn't find me.
Couldn't find you.
He was like, Jenny, are you out here? I'm like, come find me, David. I can't out here. And yeah, it's quite snowy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice. My kids are excited. They were out last night in the snow until about 11:30, since they know that we're going to
11:30.
Oh yeah. I was like, what is going on? I kept seeing the light go on outside. I'm like, what is going on? Lauren's
so
like,
funny.
oh, Mason and Kate are out there.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, honestly, we haven't had this nice of a snow. And do you remember the last time?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, I don't remember the time it's come down with about 45-mile-an-hour winds and a -5 wind chill, but this is kind of the nicest snow I think, we've ever had in a while.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine my kids, my gosh, they would have loved this snow. And the sun's coming out.
That's right.
Yeah,
it'll probably melt off pretty fast and be back to normal.
And then we've got another round coming for next week. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, we got another round coming for next week. So I have a whole bunch of lambs that are going to get lost in the snow again. So I woke up this morning to a text from you that made me so mad.
How about that? Holy smokes.
So tell them what you sent me.
Well, it was a presentation at the World Economic Forum, and I think that was from 2023, or no, was it 17 or 18 or 19 or something? It was several years ago, whatever it was. And it was a futurist who was on there, and she was talking about basically brainwave monitoring technology that's here and coming and where it's going to be. And I mean, it was literally eye-opening, and she wasn't necessarily, I watched the whole interview or the whole presentation. She wasn't necessarily like completely saying, yeah, this is exactly what's going to happen. But basically, in one way or another, she was saying that it is here in some sense, it is coming, and it's going to be a pretty serious thing we need to look at for cognitive liberty. And that was the word she used, was, we need to get ahead of.
They used the word liberty at Davos?
She actually did. She did, because she said, this is either going to be the most oppressive technology ever, or we're going to have to get ahead of it to, really make sure that these corporations aren't going to use it to control us 100%. But basically, it's taking the wearables that we already have, like your Fitbits and your Apple Watch and your ear pods, and they've got technology in there in one way or another to monitor your brain's activity. And they can she said they're at the level they can somewhat disseminate information as far as like how your brain's actually reacting to certain things. And they kind of play it out as good because, okay, we can have long haul truckers wear a hat that will let the corporation they're working for know that this guy's exhausted, he needs to get off the road because he may have an accident. That's how they paint it. But it's literally just a subset of control, because now your every thought in some capacity is going to go through some device.
Well, didn't we have a movie? Wasn't that pretty much the whole bend of Minority Report?
Yeah, pre-crime. I mean, I think it's her presentation was what
scared me so bad. I was like, wake up.
Yeah.
I thought I was dreaming. It was bad.
Yeah. Well, I was at least happy to see that she was like, look, this could really be used for bad means unless the government, but see there she wants the government to be the savior of the deal.
Nope.
And the government's going to want to use it 100% just as bad as the corporations are going to want to use it. I mean, I think it's a bad deal, no matter what. I mean, I don't wear any of that stuff. I never have. I try not to keep my phone on me, on my person. I put my phone in like a Faraday bag every night when I sleep because I don't want the interference. I try to turn my routers off and, do as much as I know there's only so much we can do, but I do not want an implant. I do not want to wear wearables. I do not want to be monitored 24/7 about what's coming out of my brain.
Yeah, I think it's scary. And I talked to a legislator yesterday about AI, and I think people are not connecting data centers and AI. And I think we really need we're going to have somebody come on and talk about that too, because we're doing what we normally do, which is looking at what's right in front of our face and not what's down the road.
Oh, yeah.
And we do that all the time, and we just need to stop doing that. But I don't want to take up any more time because I know we want to talk to Peter Murphy today, and I'm pretty excited about it, frankly, because, we had the rally here on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We had the rally at the Capitol on Tuesday, pushing back against the, Biden green energy agenda. And, it reminded site, and you ought to go look it up. Peter can tell you for sure, but I think it's CFACT.org. He'll tell you in a second. But if you go and you look on their website, you realize how far back this garbage goes.
Yeah.
Years, decades of this. And so it's like what you were talking about with the brain implants. They have been psychologically imprinting this on our brains for so long that now we have these kids going, oh, global warming, Greta Thunberg, we love her. It's like, what?
Yeah, you don't know any different. Well, look at President. Did you watch any of President Carter's service?
No.
I did.
No.
I didn't watch it all, but I saw what I liked, Jenny, was they were going in reverse painting about how he was recognizing climate change, 25, 30 years before everybody else. And he was taking initiatives to turn the climate around. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, as only Jimmy Carter could. All right, well, let's bring on Peter because I'm sure Peter has something to say about that. Good morning, Peter Murphy. How are you?
Good morning, Jenny. Good morning, Michael.
Morning, sir.
We are so glad to have you on. Is it CFACT.org? What's the name of the website?
That's right.
Oh, good. CFACT.org. It's easy.
Yeah, the website posts articles pretty much every day, 1 or 2 articles a day, keeps it fresh. On a range of subjects related to energy, environment, climate, government, technology. And also we have part of CFACT is climatedepot.com, which our communications director, Mark Morano, spearheads. And he's a frequent guest on Fox News and OAN and a whole bunch of media, Joe Piscopo's show. He's all over the place. And he's a fellow traveler to the UN climate summits every year, which we've had the adventure of attending.
I love the term adventure.
Yeah,
it can be.
Well, so how far back does your website actually go? It goes back quite a ways, doesn't it? Like 1986 or something?
Well, the organization was founded in, I believe, 1985.
Okay.
At least legally. And it was really 2 graduate students who founded it. And they did it the way you should not found an organization. They basically scraped and scrapped for donations, mostly small dollar donations. And whereas a lot of these organizations are founded by very well-to-do, wealthy people who endow the organizations, and but they did it the hard scrabble way. But they're going strong. And
well, I was going to say, is there any other way to do it? That's how we've done it for 15 years.
Well, right.
$5, thanks.
And it still sustains them. Grassroots sustains this operation. and we've stayed lean, but we've attracted a lot of support in terms of credible scientists, and established a lot of partnerships. So we've brought lawsuits against Old Dominion utility company in Virginia to stop their offshore wind turbines. That's been in federal court. That's still going on. They just wanted to do it without any kind of study of its effect on whales.
Yeah, didn't you like my opening slide?
Dozens of whales who've been beached in the last several years, unprecedented numbers. And it's interesting. I've started recently using the word denial and deniers. The deniers are the climate fanatics who deny science, who deny reality, like the whales. And in fact, I wrote recently about the incident I had in the last UN summit in Azerbaijan, where I forget the name of the group offhand, but there was, what they have is they have a section of the conference where the underwriters of the conference, a lot of these corporations and what they call non-government organizations, NGOs, which we technically are. I guess CFACT is technically a non-governmental organization.
No, you're just an organization. You're a grassroots organization.
Well,
right?
Exactly. But the NGO word is used for a lot of these larger groups. And this one group was based out of Britain, and they were very protective of sea life, whales, dolphins, you name it. Beautiful displays, very expensive setup. And I talked to this lady, and very friendly, until I pointed out that whales were dying off of the North Atlantic coast and washing up on New Jersey and Massachusetts. And I said, because of wind turbines. And she looked at me, had no idea that this was happening. And it was interesting. So for all of her organization's mission of purportedly protecting whales, as soon as I told her that these wind turbines were killing whales didn't matter. She was in denial. What mattered, because you're going up against one of the doctrines of climate fanaticism, wind turbines. And if that's now causing whale deaths, guess whose side she was really on? She was on the dogma of windmills not protecting whales. And yet
that's kind of like what Michael and I were talking about when we came on. They've done this for so many years. And my gosh, I remember my kids are homeschooled, but I had them take the CFACT or something. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a kind of a test to see where they were. Mm-hmm. And I had two of the kids come up to me and go, Mom, they had questions about global warming on there. And I'm like, but that test isn't even a mainstream test. So it's been embedded in so much. You look at TikTok videos, it's embedded in curricula. I mean, Peter, how do you scrub these kids' brains?
Yeah, it's very disturbing. We've written about that. And one thing that's endearing about Donald Trump is he openly calls it the green news scam. Yeah. I mean, you don't even hear Republicans talk that way. Donald Trump talks that way. And he just got reelected.
Because Republicans are busy with their hands out to the Biden administration trying to get money for this garbage.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, I think, is going to be on the chopping block, actually, this year with the new Congress, because they've got to find money. And this is massive corporate welfare that the Biden administration has been doing to these big corporations and interest groups who've been getting massive tax breaks, subsidies for EV. And here's another irony, if you will. To produce batteries for electric vehicles takes enormous amounts of strip mining and extraction. Well, I thought environmentalists were against that. And what I've written about on CFACT's site is the conflict, the contradiction between real environmentalism and climate, and the climate movement, the global warming movement. They are in conflict. Real environmentalists do not like to see whales killed. Real environmentalists do not like to see excessive mining and strip mining. They were supposed to be against that. But now that that's how you produce batteries, by getting these minerals out of the ground, can't do it for fracking, which is a very minor incursion underground. All right.
Well, certainly
in terms
comparatively.
of the surface area, to do fracking, the surface areas, you hardly notice anything different. But for mining to get minerals and lithium and nickel and all these other ingredients for batteries, I mean, you have to wipe out square miles of land to get those kinds of things. And if you want the kind of EVs that they want to put on the road in the coming years, you're going to have to wipe out, the state of Minnesota. And
well,
more.
so you and I connected.
It's rife with contradictions and hypocrisies.
Yeah, you and I connected over the article that I wrote in the Federalist a couple of weeks ago about our governor taking an MOU, putting together an MOU with Denmark for more green stuff. And you'll be happy to know he's also entered into an agreement. Isn't it a Korean businessman now that's putting in the great big lithium plant in Catoosa? Somebody who's on help me. And
I'll have to look. I can't remember.
So we now have this huge lithium plant that's coming to, one of our towns. And I think it's a saltwater, like a water extraction or saltwater extraction of lithium. But people don't understand how toxic lithium is. I mean, I guess they just it's okay, but it burns. Robert says it's a lithium plant in Muskogee. Okay. It burns and you can't put it out. I mean, it's toxic to sea life. I mean, it's toxic to what? I mean, what are we doing?
Well, again, this phony climate issue is just bringing out, the worst in some people. And the idea that mankind can kind of alter the climate's trajectory, the world's a big place and the sun is even larger than that. And what affects the climate are a variety of things that are forever beyond our control. Yeah. And carbon emissions is not one of those things that affects climate. It just doesn't. I mean, more and more scientists who are not getting government money to be paid to say a certain thing, which we saw with the COVID issue, right? That the scientists were on the government dole. They were getting paid by Anthony Fauci, and they said what Fauci wanted them to say. The climate issue is 10 times as true. And so when you look at reputable scientists, they will tell you that carbon emissions are not affecting the climate of the earth. Carbon emissions
Steph says, I think the climate change
0.10% or 0.04%, excuse me, of atmospheric gases, which makes
and it wasn't even that. When I was doing my master's in 92 or in 90, I had I don't even remember what it was, but I had to go to OU and I did a special program and it was about global warming because then I had a different perspective.
And the world was coming to an end in 2000, right?
Do what?
That's right.
The world was coming to an end in 2000.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, that was back in the hole in the ozone days. Remember that? And the hole in the ozone, I mean, all this sun with all these rays
hairspray
come and blow us up.
Acid rain, Jenny. Don't forget about what I was so afraid of, acid rain growing up.
Yeah.
But it's not funny. Yeah. It's not funny, but it's true. And then Dorn said turbine blades are made of balsa wood, which causes deforestation. Very negative impact to thousands of acres.
What causes deforestation is these solar panels that are wiping out forests and taking over farmland and destroying landscapes and nature.
They were doing that in Michigan
right now. Is the climate agenda.
So what about what's going on in Michigan where they're ripping out that whole forest because Hochul says that they have to put in this solar farm?
You mean Whitmer, Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan?
Sorry.
Yeah. Hochul's another mess over in New York.
That's right. You get them.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know the specifics of that project, but I mean, that's the problem. And, there's so much money behind this. Okay. And this is the classic collusion between corporations and big government. There's money that drives this. And then you have the donor class of people like Michael Bloomberg and Bill Gates and donors like that who can give hundreds of millions of dollars tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to politicians, to these organizations. Jeff Bezos is another one of these types that drives this policy. And the science isn't driving any of this. It's a massive groupthink. It's a massive cottage industry, and money is driving this. And Donald Trump is the one guy who can put a stop to it. And hopefully in his second term, he will have the people in place to stop this grant making, to put a stop to the climate gravy train and change the narrative and actually get real debate. Let's get real scientific debate. Let's talk. Al Gore has never, and will never debate the issue of global warming. He won't, because he would get defeated. Somebody would make a mincemeat out of him. Anthony Fauci does not debate his view of science because he can't stand someone to challenge him who's a scientist.
But isn't it
So
also
this is the thing that Trump can really do. He can really change the narrative and invite actual science to the discussion, to the media, and just challenge the orthodoxies. They could do a lot on the curriculum side. They can stop funding and encouraging. I mean, if you go on the Department of Education's website, it's all over the government's websites, by the way, this climate dogma. Education, EPA, NOAA, on and on and on. NASA is filled with educational stuff. It's brainwashing. And again, there's nothing wrong with having a debate that, is the world warming or not? Why is it warming? What are the influences? I mean, the world is warmer than it was 150 years ago. That's true. But that's not because of carbon emissions.
Well, it's funny. I want to make a statement, then I want to ask a question on top of that, Peter. I got into I wouldn't even say it's a debate. There was a greenie. We had a business, and it was a public business, and we had customers coming in. There's a guy, he was a major green guy, and we were just talking about global warming stuff, and he heard us and he had to chime in. And I literally just turned around and I told him, I said, I think, as far as I can tell, the ice has been melting for about 25,000 years. And
then
I said,
I don't up in the other half of the year.
Yeah. I said, I don't think, we had too much to do with that. But when you talk about that group think, the people you run into or these organizations, I mean, how do they reconcile just the complete deniability of everything with real science and the death of all these animals and eagles and bats and everything else? I mean, how do they actually reconcile it? Or do they not?
There's a greater threat in some people's minds. If a few eagles have to die to save the world, then those are what's the military expression? Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting it now. Collateral damage.
Oh, collateral damage.
Right?
I thought you were going to say kick ass and go home. Wrong one.
Oh my.
Well, I was going to ask you too to comment a little bit on this, because I had quite a discussion with a couple of representatives the other day, and there were some words thrown around like tree huggers and that kind of thing. And, one of the comments was, we have to allow free enterprise to work. And my argument, Peter, is that you can't have free enterprise when the government is stealing money from one person and giving it to different companies, even all the companies. I mean, that would be pure socialism. You just steal it from me and then go redistribute it everywhere. But you're not even doing that. You're stealing it from me, and then you're giving it to company A and company C, but not company B.
Government
X.
is picking winners and losers.
How is that free enterprise?
It's not. It's corporate. It's crony capitalism. That's how climate policy is carried out. That's how it's implemented. It's pure crony capitalism. The so-called Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA that Joe Biden enacted, was a climate bill. Okay, that's why Joe Manchin voting for that and being the difference in that bill passing was a colossal sellout. He sold out his home state of West Virginia, and you knew right there he wasn't running again. But he also didn't want to give up a potential, rainmaker role as a ex-senator in his twilight years, and which is why he caved in and voted for that. That bill was a bad bill for West Virginia. It was a bad bill for the country. But what that bill was a corporate climate bill to Democratic donors, and that's why they barely passed it. And that's why the Republicans opposed it, because it was purely a donor-driven crony capitalism bill called the Inflation Reduction Act. And Biden runs around saying this is such a great accomplishment of his. It's not an accomplishment to spend other people's money and give it away to your donor base. That's not an accomplishment. That's not helping the country. That's making the problem worse. And that's what he's done. That's a
I'm going to clip that part, and I'm going to play it like 500 times.
Well, it's a pretty good accomplishment if you're a Democrat.
Well, or look, Republicans aren't immune from this. I'm just saying, politics is going to be part of it. The question is, there's always going to be politics and legislation. That's the country we live in. And as Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. So let's stipulate there's going to be some of that. But that was so excessive and grotesque.
Yeah.
And it had no public purpose. And it's just perpetuating a fraud on the country. By the way, you mentioned, young people in the education. Before I forget this story. So back to Azerbaijan, we were, whenever we go to one of these countries for the UN, we always try to build in a little, touristy moments. And we went to the old city downtown and to the different shops and what have you. And we ran into these college students from North Carolina who were also at the climate conference. And so we were chatting with them, and it was amazing to me that I think it's a disturbing illustration, microcosm of what you described earlier, Jenny. And that is when we started, and we had a very civil, very cordial discussion with these folks, and two of the four of them, when we were done talking to them about the history of this, what's really happening, the world's not going to burn up in 30 years, you're going to be able to have kids, we're going through that. You could tell the different reactions. One of them wasn't buying it, but didn't know enough to really argue back. But two of the girls were like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Wow. Like we actually comforted her to telling her like what's really happening. And this, this doomsday narrative that they're told, we're going to hit past the tipping point in 2050, and oh my gosh, we got to lower the temperature a degree and a half. The temperature changes more than that on my way to work in the morning. But I just remember the look on these two girls' faces, how relieved, like a burden was lifted from them. Now, whether that lasts, I don't know. But my point is they had never heard that discussion. They never heard this side of it ever until we're casual encounter.
Michael and I are conspiracy theorists, so I'm just warning you. The white hair, it's tinfoil. It looks like.
Hang on, I'll make a correction. I'll make a correction to that, Jenny. I'm a conspiracy analyst.
Okay, conspiracy analyst. That's true. Because what's a conspiracy? Wait 15 minutes and we'll find out. But I really honestly believe, having done, some study, I don't delve deeply into it, but having done some study on it, I really do believe that the whole climate change nonsense thing was meant to scare kids, because people who are scared will take government control, right? Oh, government will fix it. Oh, I'm all nervous. That's what happened during COVID. We saw that whole thing play out during COVID. You make this the big bad thing, and then the government comes in to say, put a mask on and vaccinate yourself and you'll be okay, kids, right? So I do think that this whole thing was just brought up in some kind of back room, some communist loving people somewhere, that they knew that if you scared, especially kids, which is why it's gone into the curriculum so much. If you scare, and you were talking to the young people who were so scared of it, if you scare kids, then who's going to help them? If mom and dad can't do it, then it has to be the government.
I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I would personally, I would avoid that description of it. I think what government has always been, okay, and you can go back to the Federalist Papers or what's the famous Machiavelli book?
Oh, The Prince.
The Prince. Thank you. Very good. You could go back hundreds of years to find a consistent human trait. The love of power and the love of money. Okay, they're the roots of all evil. And so you go back to the Bible. The Bible says that. But if you look at the Federalist Papers, why did they set up not a parliamentary system or not a single elected body, but they had the three branches, they had the bicameral legislature. And why was that? The reason for that setup in government is so people in power are a check on each other, so nobody can get too powerful. That's why the 22nd Amendment was enacted, so we don't have someone who can get elected 4 straight times with little opposition. It's tantamount to.
You mean after Roosevelt?
Why did the Democratic Congress tell FDR, you're not expanding the Supreme Court? Even they saw what a threat to power that is. He was trying to take over another branch of government to be his rubber stamp. So my point is that this lust for power and why people, sacrifice their family lives and sacrifice their weekend is that the desire to wield power is enormous. And that's why people, again, do great sacrifices to get elected to these positions. And so you have a dynamic with climate change where that's just another means by which to empower oneself. So I don't think there's anything conspiratorial about it. It's a human trait that goes back to the Garden of Eden, if you will. And so that's why our system in this country is so important. Donald Trump, for instance, is in a position to push back on this climate influence and to because that is a form of controlling the population. COVID was a form of controlling it, but that's not, again, it's not a conspiracy theory to say that. It's just simply history playing out. And so hopefully, one of the objectives, excuse me, of CFACT is to push back on this narrative, to put an alternative narrative out there, which is why we get trashed by the Al Gores and the media matters or whatever.
Dude, that's a badge. That's a badge. You just
sure. I mean, Mark Morano,
badge of honor.
Mark Morano, who publishes Climate Depot, which is part of CFACT. He's constantly labeled because he is not part of their narrative. He is pushing back and discrediting it and doing it with a smile on his face and doing it with real science and ridiculing it, making fun of these people. And that's why it's so encouraging to see sort of the things that are happening even in Europe now. The farmers in the Netherlands are pushing back on this. The EU lost a bunch of these climate people in the EU parliament or whatever, lost their seats. Germany's government's collapsed because they've gone to the great lengths with this ridiculous green energy, which is not green energy, and it's not a viable alternative, and it's wicked expensive. That's being pushed back. And so that's encouraging to see that. But I mean, and just one more, if you look at the Davos, I've written about Davos and those meetings. I think you might have mentioned that earlier. John, there's this hilarious clip. I mean, it's worthy of Saturday Night Live. John Kerry shows up and he made some statement, which I quoted in this article I wrote about it a year ago. Just think of us, all of us in this room, and, we're shaping the planets, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's like, they're so full of themselves. It's incredible. But I still got to fly my private jets, man, because I'm that important. Like he's basically said that. And so we could go on and on about this, but I'm cautiously optimistic that there's going to be some real pushback in this second term of Donald Trump. So I think it's very important because it is part of what you call the deep state. It's not just the intel community; it's the EPA. It's all of these agencies.
Oh yes, it is.
That are not accountable. That feel they're immune, that nobody can touch them, can't be fired, et cetera, and hopefully that in the second term Trump can do what he could not do and did not do in his first term, is really push back on these power hungry people and cut off the money, cut off the flow of money to these universities and these think tanks that perpetuate this bogus narrative on climate.
Well, I was going to mention when you were talking about that, there's a paper from Ireland that I followed. My family came from Ireland, so I just kind of follow it. And I was surprised that in their last elections, which were not very long ago, so just I think 3 weeks ago, their last elections, they booted every single Green Party member out but one, and that person is in control of the library, the library system. So I thought, and part of the reason why they did that, and I think we need to talk about this now, we need to kind of dump up onto this now, because we've talked about the crony capitalism, we talked about the money coming in, but what we haven't talked about, because it hasn't happened here in America yet, but it has happened in the EU, it has happened in Ireland, these heavy environmental taxes that are being put on these people, that are what is making them stand up and say, get your hand out of my pocket and step back. And I think we here in America aren't really seeing that danger because it hasn't happened here yet. But
Well,
I
it's
think
starting to, actually.
I think you might talk a little bit about that, because that, I think, is, well, that's what's next. If we don't stop it here, it's going to be exactly what happens next, because we seem to do everything. We left Europe, and then everything they do, we pick up on. So weird.
Well, so speaking of green taxes, environmental taxes, New York State, which I just wrote about, just passed a law signed by the governor to tax energy companies, in effect holding them liable for storm damage, because their products that people buy and use emit carbon emissions that somehow, or so she claims, affect the storms and make storms worse than they otherwise would be. I mean, it's so preposterous. It's amazing they do this with a straight face. And it's even more disturbing that almost you never see a reporter sit there and say, can you please prove, or get someone up here standing next to you to prove cause and effect here? Forget it. You had a whole legislature, excuse me, which is, filled with know-nothings, pass this law. She signs it, calls them polluters. Okay. You have environmental laws that guard against, oil spills. You have safety protocols, on and on. Nobody's polluting. Carbon is not a pollutant. It's key to, it's how we live on Earth. It's how we grow trees and plants and eat and all the rest. So anyway, this is a $75 billion climate super fund that over the next 25 years will add up to $75 billion, and they're going to apportion the expenses to all of these energy companies sell in the state to fill up that fund so they can redistribute it, and to their climate interest groups, their environmental groups, for projects and you name it. And so, buying up land and the whole bit. It's really disturbing. It's and again, it goes to this idea that these fanatics think they can just pass a law, impose costs on somebody, and it's not going to affect everybody else. It is going to affect everybody else. And it's going to make New York even less competitive. And California is the most egregious example of this, where they've been basically imposing climate mandates and regulations on everything, to the point now where, all in the name of stopping carbon emissions. And what was the result in this past week? What was the tragic result?
LA burned completely to the ground.
Half a dozen people are dead.
Yeah.
Thousands of homes are burnt to the ground. And all of this carbon monoxide from the fires is in the atmosphere. So for all of their decades of lunacy on climate to control emissions, this has led to, it's inextricably tied to these out of control fires that have now made the air quality and the emissions exponentially worse. I mean, think about the cruel irony of that. And again, the emissions we'll live with. I don't want to equate that with the loss of life or the massive loss of property, but their whole existence, their whole reason for these stupid environmental things, for the snail darters and destroying dams, not building them, but destroying them, and refusing to clear cut forests and control burn the underbrush. The whole reason for that is environmentalism and climate change and controlling emissions. And now what's happening? The worst emissions are happening right as we speak.
Yep, that smelt fish is doing pretty good though, Peter. It's pretty happy.
We can all rest easy now, right? I mean, trade-offs in life, right? Trade-offs.
You know what?
I'm
going to be kind of mean, which everybody understands that I do on a regular basis, which may be why some of them tune in. I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to poo-poo the loss of life for certain. I mean, that's just egregious. And I hope there's some lawsuits. I mean, if these people were smart, they would start suing the absolute crap out of California for these policies that created what they got. But I've seen that several celebrities have had their properties burned to the ground. And I'm really hoping, since Hollywood has been such an absolute 100% promoter of this, I'm hoping it will be a wake-up call to some people to say, maybe this isn't quite such a great idea. I don't know, but I mean, what happened is horrifying.
And a lot of it goes back to these ridiculous policies in the name of the environment that, and I see this all the time in California and my home state of New York. They think it's a form of virtue signaling that they can get up on a soapbox and preen about something, not expecting a blowback or a cost. Well, there are costs and there are trade-offs and there are risks. And one of the basic functions of government, we learn this as little kids: fire protection, police protection.
Yeah,
those are the two most basic function of government, even before education was in play and became a public good.
Well, the jury's out on that, actually.
They utterly failed at the most basic functions of government: is fire protection and protecting people. Yeah. And there ought to be a consequence for that. I do hope it's a wake-up call, that you can balance that with sound environmental policy. You need more dams. You need more water. You have the capacity to do it. The political classes refuse to do it, even though California is among the most highest tax states in the country. Yeah. It taxes the wealthy. It's not like the wealthy aren't paying their fair share. They sure are.
Right.
And yet this happened, and it was preventable. And in fact, there's footage there was a terrible fire about 6 years ago in California where a lot more people died, I think.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm forgetting the name of it. But Donald Trump went out there with Kevin McCarthy, who was a congressman from that area, senior member of the House. And they're on tape saying, this is what you need to do, Governor Newsom. And, you have a huge delegation from that state represented in Congress. These are the things you need to spend your money on, not stupid bullet trains to nowhere. You need to spend your money on getting water, getting dams built, clear cutting these forests, these overgrown forests. This was spelled out 6 years ago, and nothing's been done. And now we have this. It's breathtaking.
No, I don't know. I kind of agree with Valerie. We've had quite a number of comments, and I just haven't put them up quite because I've wanted people to concentrate on what Newscom. Steph always has good comments, though. So here's the thing, because we're 45 minutes in, and Michael and I, we'll go 2 hours if we need to, but I do want. We had a rally at our state capitol on Tuesday to push back against the green agenda, because there have been several very large, one is a very large solar installation that's going in north central Oklahoma that they're trying to stop. You and I know the reasons why. I don't have to probably go into that right now, but very, very large wind installation that was going into some of the most beautiful areas in our state, in the southeastern part of the state, where tourism is a huge thing. And that actually, the wind project, because of the activism that was going on with the residents in that area, they backed out and took off. Now, the solar installation, they're still having problems with that. But Peter, I know with CFACT, your group wants, you seek to educate, but then you also seek to push back. I mean, we were talking about that before we went on, the fact that you you stood up in, where was it, in Dubai, and gave a lady, it's a video on your website, it's a lot of fun to watch, actually. You gave this very elitist woman, climate change proponent, kind of a gentle beat down, which I really enjoyed seeing. But
they want to impose on third world developing countries these climate mandates when they need electricity, they need oil and gas, they need the things that made us a prosperous nation, and they want to deny that to the third world. That's what I was pushing back on.
Yeah, well, and it's true. I mean, it's absolutely true, but that's a lot of the world, everything. What do you think? I mean, we've gotten local activism that's gotten together and has actually made a big dent, like in this problem, in this wind development in southeastern Oklahoma. But like I said, we are pushing back against legislators who, until the spigot goes off, there's still money coming in. And like I said earlier, they've got a kind of a skewed idea of what the economy is of this. It's not a rational economy. It's not an open economy. How do you suggest that the people who are watching this morning, we got a nice audience, so what would you tell the people who are watching this morning? What's the best way to keep up our insistence that this needs to go away?
Well, legislators are the key because they authorize this. A lot of these states have overtaken local control on zoning and things to install these kinds of claptrap, structures, windmills and solar panels and what have you. So legislators are the key to this. And Oklahoma is a Republican-controlled state, and I think you can have some traction in exposing not just the folly of it, but look, if you follow the money, if you download, who's contributing to them, because typically a lot of these companies, these people building the projects and getting paid to do it by the government, are supporting the politicians that are authorizing it. And so,
yes, they are.
When you make that connection, that very explicit connection, in the age of social media, that's not good exposure for a lawmaker. So I just think the key is facts and exposure on the one hand, and with social media you can do that sort of thing. And look, I personally I don't believe in name calling, or besmirching someone, or getting, like, you don't want to cross a line with any of this. You want to keep it factual. I call it respectfully aggressive.
I like that, actually. I think that's very good. Respectfully aggressive.
I also think you should, to the extent you can, get groups of people, leaders, community leaders, people who can look. What matters more than anything else to a lawmaker, to a politician, is voters. Okay. You have interest group politics. You have lots of money flowing. You have the merits of an issue. Those are distant second and third in importance to them. Voters still are the most important thing to a politician. And if they perceive that their voters don't want something, they're going to react no matter who's giving them money and no matter what they believe of the merits of an issue. And I'll give you a great example of this. I was told to me years ago in New York. Actually, this was built in Texas, but there was something called this atom smasher thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was so this was being seriously considered for upstate New York, and because upstate New York has some vast, not even the Adirondacks so much, but if you go to Western New York, like west of the Finger Lakes toward Buffalo, like Rochester, Buffalo area, there's a lot of open space there, and that was under consideration to build this atom smasher, which took enormous acreage of property and all the rest. But the project was really interesting and could be an economic growth generator and science. There's a lot to be said for that project, and I don't know the details, but I remember hearing from a very intelligent, conscientious state assembly member who was in favor of it, and it was in his district, and he went around and held district hearings. And you know what? The public didn't want it, and they spoke up and told him that. And I remember him telling me, he said, how did he put it? He said, look, he told me, he relayed a conversation he had with the governor at the time, Governor Mario Cuomo. He said, Governor, I'm for this project, but my constituents don't want it. And there's a time to lead and there's a time to represent, and I've got to represent my constituents. They don't want this. And he did his due diligence. And I think you've got to create that dynamic with these legislators. Because let's stipulate that maybe some of them really believe that, like, hey, this is a good thing and all the above energy options and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, you just quoted our governor.
Okay. But, that's the thing. You've got to convince them that enough of their own constituents don't want it, period. And your job is to represent us. And I think that, I would, to the extent you can organize that way, and to the extent you can get people who speak for others, you get, pastors, organizational leaders, people who have email lists, people who have social media presence, because you get 3 of those people in a state lawmaker's office, district office. He's not talking to 3 people. He's talking to potentially 30,000 people. Right. Okay. And so I think that's the kind of pressure you want to bring to something like this. And leave behind. Look, there's lots of stuff online. You can get it from us. You can get it from Heartland. You can get it from Competitive Enterprise Institute. You can get lots of materials that say, windmills are bad. Wind turbines don't work. They kill birds. You can leave that behind with them, the merits, but they're going to do this not because you convince them of the merits, but because you convince them their voters don't want it and that their office is at risk. Remember, the 2 most important things to every politician are jobs and housing. My job and my house. And that's what you've got. That's the
same thing for lobbyists.
That's the play you've got to make. They want to be there next year. They want to be there 5 years from now. And if this thing is risking that, they'll back off.
Well, and I'm glad you say that, because we've had several comments while you've been talking. One of our comments on Rumble was, if you want to call them Republicans, most are rhinos. And then we had Steph who chimes in and says rhino controlled. And I do think, part of the problem that we have is the fact that you would think that people who wear the R would get crony capitalism. They kind of understand that and not want to go that direction, or I don't know. It's just so frustrating to have these Republicans who in theory should not be agreeing with any of this give us excuses and find reasons as to why it's okay to do this. And it's because it's free enterprise or, whatever.
Yeah, but I agree. I agree with Lisa, though, Jenny, that comment she made.
Hold on.
I think the general people, they truly believe this stuff is good. They believe solar's good. I mean, it's so slick. All the marketing, all the advertising. You've got all these professional people that in some capacity have, they've got their science, even though it's wrong. I mean, we know their science is wrong, but they just play it to a point to where it all just seems so good. It's like I agree with Lisa. A lot of people I talk to, they have no idea that it have the massive implications that it does. And I don't know how we necessarily educate the masses to come around.
Especially when we've got public schools who are educating them in a completely different direction and frightening them. So, I mean, it is, how do you do that, Peter? I mean, how do we get this education out there that's literally like salmon swimming in the face of, settled science or what the school says, or, fill in the blank.
It's going to take social media. It's going to take collaboration with other organizations. I mean, CFACT brought a lawsuit against Dominion Energy, this big bad utility in Virginia. We didn't do it alone. Okay, we collaborated with other organizations as joint litigants to bring about this case.
Yeah.
We couldn't do it on our own. So you're going to have to build alliances like that, and you're going to have to find those people, maybe who have a turbine, down the street from them, or they're. I mean, green space is really an intrinsic good. A lot of people support that. Well, they're going to litter it with solar panels. Like, show pictures of what that looks like. In fact, I walked into one of these displays at the Climate Summit last November, and this was McKinsey and Company, big time consulting firm, international firm, and they had this picture of this beautiful landscape covered with solar panels, and they thought that was a good thing. And I'm looking at this is what they think is good. What is good about this? There's less green and there's more gray solar panels, which by the way, have to, disintegrate and have to be put in a landfill in 20 years and don't work very well, especially when it's not sunny and when it's raining. So there's just all kinds of ways to ridicule this. But I would, you have short, simple fact sheets, and just try to build alliances with other organizations and actually meet in person with these lawmakers.
Well, and I will say the rally that we had on
lawmakers
Tuesday,
do not like to see their names taken in vain in the public sphere. They just don't, which is why, on a grander scale, this is why the Biden administration, and actually the FBI under the Trump administration, although they were rogue in this case, this is why they were censoring. They were censoring people on COVID. LinkedIn, I cannot put some of my articles on LinkedIn because
even to now.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
I have never denied climate change. Never. Climate is changing. And yet, when I challenge the climate orthodoxy, even a place like LinkedIn has denied some of my articles. Not all of them, but some of them. And I've never denied climate change. That's silly. Of course, climate is changing.
Well, and it's interesting because Valerie says we have a lot of people burned by big wind out in Western Oklahoma who speak out, and we need more of them. And that's true. And Lisa said this, and this is true too. The same people who claim to represent us seem to have the financial capability to buy whatever information or proof they want. They are far too easily convincing the sleeping masses. And I definitely think that's true. Oh, videos from Tuesday were awesome. Thank you for putting them out there. And that is true. We did have a really big rally here on Tuesday, and this is Oklahoma. So we get a lot of the jet stream doesn't often come down this far. So we're usually pretty warm, even in January. And my goodness, it was 13 degrees on Tuesday. And we had hundreds of people show up at the Capitol to rally against the green energy agenda.
Okay,
so
well, that's a big deal. Not everybody can do that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big step forward. Yeah. And I think you have to capitalize on that rally, pictures, social media, it should be part of your literature. Again, when you go into a member's office, you leave photos of that along with basic facts about things.
Well, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Right? Like you make that rally live on, in effect. Yeah. Hey, we just had a rally.
Right, everybody, here. Are you listening?
Right? How about a rally in front of the legislator's, district office? That rattled. I remember we did that in New York on the school choice issue, and that rattled some people. Oh my gosh, there's 20 people outside my office. What do I do?
Well, and that's a good point that you make, though, Peter, is the fact that sometimes I think we think it takes so much that we get exhausted before we even begin, right? Well, we'll have to get hundreds of people. Well, if you get 5 people even or 10 people to go see your legislator, that's a pretty big deal.
And again, it's the kind of people you get. Do they speak for many, many others? That's what the member's going to notice. You know, are they part of an organization? Do they lead one? Are they the representative of, because everybody, you know, these organizations have email lists.
Yeah.
And the ability to get the word out to a number of voters. Look, and another thing, the other dynamic you have to press with them is this. Legislators do not want to run for re-election. They want to walk to re-election. Right. Okay. They want no opponent. Yeah. They get mad when they have an opponent. And even in a gerrymandered district, in a safe one-party district, okay, then their fear becomes primary. Yeah. So, you know, that's why these legislators in safe districts always raise money, because they scare off an opponent. Yeah. And then they have a war chest that they can, you know, distribute it to their friends who are in trouble and build their own power. But my point being that if you create controversy, and I don't mean, you know, name calling and scurrilous, you know, attacks or anything, but if you just create controversy for a legislator, that puts them in a very vulnerable feeling, right? And they have a very low tolerance for that. So they want to avoid controversy, and they're in the business of saying yes. And maybe up until now, all they've heard is how great windmills are, right? Like, sometimes you can give them the benefit of the doubt. Hey, like Michael, you made this point earlier. Hey, windmills are good. You know, we got to protect the environment and protect the planet and do our part and blah, blah, blah. They've never really heard the other side of it. And so maybe that's all it takes.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too, Peter, because I do think, especially me, I tend to stiff arm a lot because I've been around a long time and I know how these people work. So I always tend to want to do this first. But I think you're right. I mean, I think sometimes people don't really understand some of the real basic facts that prevent this from being something that is environmentally friendly.
Look, why did Teddy Roosevelt create Yellowstone National Park? To preserve its beauty. Okay, take that spirit and say, why are we going to turn Oklahoma into a solar parking lot? Why are we going to kill millions of birds with these things when we don't need them? Yeah. We have abundant energy in this state. We don't need this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we have nuclear power. That's I mean, if emissions makes you put your hair on fire, nuclear power is emissions free, and that's going. I think that's going to take off now, and especially
that's
with
interesting.
Microsoft buying 3 Mile Island, they're going to turn the nukes back on because AI takes so much energy. So that's probably the trend going forward. So even a woke organization like Microsoft is recognizing that windmills and solar powers are not going to empower AI technology. They need a lot more. And that's why they are reopening 3 Mile Island. Think about that. That's a big step. And so I think that, you know, when you have pristine areas, why are we going to risk turning Oklahoma into a solar panel parking lot? And then you have some image of what that looks like. Nobody wants that.
Well, I think that's why
I mean, the person who does want it, who's not making money off of it.
But that's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it right there. Find me the person who wants it that's not making money off of it.
They don't exist, I think. So anyway, look, it's been great being on with you. Thank you.
Well, really thank you for being on, Peter. I know, Michael, you usually are a little more talkative. Have I just been?
No. No. Well, you know, we see here, Peter, because we've had several local people on with all these leases and all these promises within the windmill community, you know, that they're promising all this money to all these people to have easements on their land and this and that, and then they lock them up in NDAs, and then they can't come out later and say, we don't get anything. This thing was a total scam. All they're doing is
You got to
destroying.
find those people and get them on social media, get them on traditional media, get them on talk radio shows.
Well, that's the whole
story.
Well, that's the whole part of it. They can't. There's only so much they can say because of the contracts they entered into.
And they're scared.
Yeah. I mean, it's a slippery. I mean, these guys are slick. It's a very slippery slope of what, you know, who's even willing to come out and talk to us and tell us. But we've heard absolute horror stories with that.
Yeah, you got to document them. You got to write them down. You got to spread the word on that stuff. Absolutely. And look, it can turn, you know, at some point this could really take off. Like and I think that's why, again, that's why I think Trump's, you know, when Trump gets up there publicly and calls it the green new scam, like Republicans don't talk that way.
Yeah.
You know? And he is, and he's saying what's true. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, like it's significant that he would get up and say something like that. He's not beholden to them.
Well, and that is a good thing. But you know what?
Right.
Before you get off of here, Peter, I do want to ask you this. Do you have anybody at all in your group who's working on AI?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think we've written about it, but
okay. Because that's the other thing that does kind of concern me. I mean, on numerous levels. One of them obviously is the fact that it's going to suck down so much energy. But the other thing is, you know, what are we how close are we going to get to Skynet? You know, I think this is something that we really have to, you know, I don't want some dude showing up at my door that my dog barks at. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think we need to really look at AI.
Sarah, what was her name?
Sarah Connor.
Sarah.
Yeah.
Connor.
Yeah. I don't want to be Sarah Connor.
Anyway, on that pleasant note, happy Friday and
well, thanks. Absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining us, Peter. I really do appreciate it, and you taking the time to chat with us, because I think it's really important for people to understand that there are national organizations out there fighting this. This isn't just some backwoods Oklahomans who, you know, are crybaby because they don't want people to have their land rights to be able to put a giant windmill next door to them. I mean, I think it's a lot bigger than that. We're not tree huggers. We're concerned about the environment too. And so I think you've made that point for us.
Remember, Jenny, solar panels and windmills are anti-environment.
Exactly.
They are anti-environment. If you are a tree hugger, you should not be for solar and wind panel and wind turbines. And
exactly.
In fact, I got to tell you that.
Okay.
I should send you an article I wrote. This is probably at least 4 years ago, maybe. Michael Moore, of all people.
Yeah.
He was the executive. The one film I thought it was actually a good one was called Planet of the Humans. Remember, Planet of the Apes, Planet of the Humans.
Yeah.
It was a remarkable documentary on the folly of solar and wind energy.
Michael Moore.
He had this guy, Jeff, somebody narrate. So Moore never appears in it or talks at all. It was a brilliant film. I did a review of this like 4 years ago when it came out, and it got a lot of blowback for him. A lot of people were upset that, you know, one of their own demolished their narrative. It was a brilliant film. I'd encourage you to watch that. It's probably, I think it's free on YouTube. Planet of the Humans. He destroys solar and wind energy. That it's useless, doesn't work. It's fossil fuel reliant. It doesn't replace anything. It's reliant upon them. It's a brilliant breakdown.
But see, I think that's what's so funny, because I have a cousin who is very, you know, he's kind of very into this, and he bought an electric car kind of early on, you know, because, hey, emissions and all of that kind of stuff. And I said, well, but here's the problem.
Strip mining's okay to make the batteries, right?
Here's my problem with that, though. Don't you have to charge it?
You have to charge it. It's dependent on oil, and because a lot of electricity is brought about by coal, gas, and oil. Imagine that. But
So how did we gain anything from that?
you really don't. I mean, when you combine the manufacture of those vehicles, and it doesn't help anything, you know. And with all due respect to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Selma Hayek, you know, in that ad they did for the Super Bowl, it's a farce.
Terrible.
It's a total farce. And look, if people want to buy electric vehicles, like, I'm not telling them not to.
No.
Yeah.
All right. But to me, if your life consists of going to the convenience store and, you know, if your life is kind of a square mile of existence, they're great. Right. If you want to take a family vacation, like the, you know, Chevy Chase, do it in another way. The Griswolds.
You're doing it in a 1977 Buick station wagon.
You'll be better off than an EV. Trust me. All right. I got to jump. Thank you, folks.
All right. Thanks so much, Peter. We do appreciate it. Thanks for
now.
being with us. All righty.
Right.
Bye-bye. Boy, great conversation today.
I'll say, you know what? I want to hit just a couple things. My laptop's about to die. I got to plug it in real quick. That's not it. It's a small one. Anyway, on that AI side.
Oh no. He plugged it in and then, well, he's coming back. I'm going to read some of your comments because we had quite a number of comments, but I was kind of afraid to put them in because I didn't want to, you know, shut Peter down. But there were some great comments. Dorn had some great ones. He said that the thing in Michigan that Whitmer's trying to do is like 400 acres of forest land. That's crazy. And then he said they're fixing to cut 130 acres of trees in Jacktown. Ooh, really? I like Jacktown. In Lincoln County to build a Black Mountain Energy battery farm and rumored data mining center, all trees and getting cleared up. That's terrible. And then Denise said if excessive CO2 is even a rational argument. I love that one. Why remove the trees that intake and thrive on CO2 for survival? So I think Michael, he's getting back on. So hang on. We'll just run through these while we're waiting on Michael to get back on. And then, of course, Dorn said Y2K was a fear movement for everybody. And I do think, you know, there's so much of that. And then he went on to say Al Gore made $300 million on his climate alarmism. And I think that's the thing. I mean, and that's exactly what our guest just said today too, you know, was it is so much about money and who's making money and what's the money maker thing. And if you really go and you look through some of these things like the carbon capture scheme where we're, you know, gonna not the oil and gas carbon capture for oil. I'm talking about where you're capturing it because you're going to be able to sell it back as a carbon credit like Julianne Romanello talked about when we were on. Okay, here comes Michael. Michael's coming back on. There he is. What happened to you?
Perfect example of having to depend on battery power right there.
You went out, did you?
Yeah.
Before you could get it.
Well, I thought my laptop was plugged in, but it wasn't actually plugged in.
All right. And then let's see. Lisa said, I think we covered this, the people that believe it. And Denise said, excellent discussion. I was just reading some of these that had gotten backed up while we were waiting on you.
Yeah.
And then Valerie said, when they aren't up for re-election, though, they just push through what they want. Now that's true. See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So in between, in their election cycle, they're doing crazy crap, some of them, and that is an issue.
Well, just like Biden doing all this crazy stuff here, right? You know, before Trump's takeover.
Videos from Tuesday were awesome. Squallis, I love that one. Yeah, we should have told him about what happened there. They don't want it in their backyard. This is true, Valerie. But then if ours is on the chopping block, they're going to complain about landowner rights. So that's what'll happen. My arms are stiff too, Jenny. People vote for and support whatever gives them stuff, whatever that stuff might be. And I don't know, Lisa, who Jeff Gibbs is. Planet of the Humans. We need to go back and watch that. John says fossil fuel reliant. That will get you in a huge fight with a lot of people. That's true. That's true. You can't even say that because people have some kind of a meltdown on you. That's a fact. People get you in a huge fight with a lot of people for the indoctrination and misinformation runs deep, blocking all capabilities to have a lick of common sense. A lick of common sense. Okay, go. What were you going to say?
Anyway, what I was going to say about AI, since you kind of ended that conversation with AI, one thing, yes, there's the entire infrastructure side where you got to have, mass amount of computing. I think they'll get all that figured out as far as the energy side goes. I think they'll come up with software solutions for the computing side. But when it comes to AI, Jenny, one thing that we have to remember, and we can already see a major difference right now between like United States AI and Chinese AI. So, there's several different large United States AI companies. We don't have to go through them, but, all that AI works through LLMs, or large language models. So what they do is what a large language model is, they take massive amounts of information and they feed it into the AI. And that's what kind of gives the AI.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
yes.
That's what gives its ability to think or reason or, whatever. Yeah. Where do you think that, on the American side, where do you think that information's coming from? It's coming from places like Wikipedia. They're not taking like an Encyclopedia Britannica and feeding it in there.
Well, even Encyclopedia Britannica, if you've looked at them lately, they're woke too.
Well, yeah, but just to the fact, like, they're going to take a Wikipedia, they're going to take a Google, like a Google type of curated set of data from Google and put it, feed it into there. And you can already see, like, when you ask specific questions, like I've watched a guy literally do this on a live video where he would ask a question, let's say about pharmaceutical issues or deaths or whatever it may be. He'll ask it to an American AI, and the American AI literally in one of the responses says, "I'm not comfortable answering that question." Literally says that. Oh yeah. Then he'll go ask it to like a Chinese AI, and then the Chinese AI will be like, "Well, yeah, the pharmaceutical industry has this and this and this," and then, it answers it more honestly. So all of that AI is going to be basically, in my opinion, curated for the fact of the people that's creating it in one way or another. I hate the fact that it's coming into the way that it is. But to your point, can a Terminator situation or Skynet situation happen? I mean, it depends on what they're feeding it. What are they putting in there? In one way or another.
I think that's what we're going to have to worry about. And I'd like to find somebody, if anybody, we've got a nice audience on today. If anybody knows anybody who knows anything about AI, or, an author has been writing on it, I would sure love to have them come on and talk about AI, because I mean, things don't scare me, but I have a lot of trepidation about AI. I'm like, it's garbage in, garbage out, which a lot of computer crap is that way anyway. It's garbage in, garbage out.
Well, think about this. Lauren and I were in Sam's yesterday. We were getting some groceries.
Okay.
Now in Sam's, they don't employ the guy to clean the floors with the little, wet cleaner. Now they've got the machine that goes automatically all through the store while you're in there. It's just going to be that slow replacement of all these jobs, all these delivery jobs in one way or another, all these service jobs in one way or another. It's going to slowly, come around. And I can tell you, Jenny, even in my business with what I do, I saw a software solution 4 or 5 years ago that cost, literally half of what my salary is. And it could literally replace my job with no humans in there whatsoever. I mean, you pay the initial person to set it up and tell it, what to do. These are all the accounts you need to get. These are the reports you need to make. These are the decisions that need to come out of there. And they've already got that kind of software, running at higher level family offices and, venture capital places. So, I mean, it's a matter of time before a lot of these white collar jobs, these basic white collar jobs that are good jobs, they're all going to be replaced, in my opinion, by AI in one way or another.
Well, I think that's why we've got to start doing some pushback, because I'm not saying AI is bad altogether.
No.
I think if you do that, you're just going to end up in an argument you can't get out of. But I think there have to be some limits placed on it. There's ethics. There are ethics, businesses that deal with ethics that should be able to discuss the ethics of AI and figure out how you put AI in a box before we open Pandora's box and it pops out and then we can't get it back in.
Well, the thing is, though, you talk about ethics. There should be ethics in this whole green energy side. Ethically, are they actually saving the planet in any capacity? No. Are they hurting the planet? Yes. Are they killing animals? Yes. Are they affecting the carbon cycle? Yes.
Well, and here's a good point that you just made that I don't think we've made enough, and we might go ahead and make it. So, for example, out on my place, we have a couple of solar chargers that we use because, we have fences that we run and, don't want to run them off the grid because we don't want to run line down there. We've got a neighbor who has a small wind turbine and they use it to generate part of their electricity. I think individual applications for this stuff is really not a bad thing. I mean, if you can use it, I don't like that you can't get rid of it once you make it. That's the big problem. So I have a solar panel that, what am I going to do with it? You can't really recycle it yet. They don't have good recycling on that. They're starting to with solar panels, because I've been doing some research on that, and they actually are doing a better job at recycling those and disconnecting them and taking the components out and then selling the components back to be used again. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But and I don't have a problem with using them individually. But when you're talking about creating like what Leanne Clinton has come on to talk to us about, that solar installation in Enid, where you're talking about over 1,000 acres of just solar panels. I guess I don't get how people can actually think that's okay. I saw a bunch of them when we went to we drove down through the southern end of Utah, did all the state parks, remember? And then we went down to Nevada and went to oh my gosh, you go gamble there. Why am I having a brain fart on
Las Vegas?
Thank you. Went to LV. And driving into Las Vegas, it's just, if you've ever done that, it's the most yicky drive ever. It's just completely desert with nothing really to look at. But you'd look over and there'd be this solar installation, acres of this solar installation. And I was like, even in the desert where it's kind of yicky and there's nothing to look at, that's not what I want to be looking at. I'd take just the desert over that. It was yucky.
Well, it always comes down to the same thing, comes down to money. And if we had constitutional money, if you didn't have a private central bank that just printed as much money as they want to print, period, then you wouldn't have all these things, because there's no way people would turn their gold and silver over, their constitutional money or their actual assets. There's no way the government would do that and fund that and subsidize that if it wasn't. And you talk about free market. Look at the free market. These EVs, all these different car companies, they're seeing just how much they're getting wasted. Their sales are just completely plummeting in the entire EV side.
Well, that's what we should mention, and I should have brought up to Peter, is it's not just the fact that the government is giving away the money. It's the point that those companies wouldn't survive. Building those EV vehicles that our governor invited in, Canoe. What did they do? They went belly up, tossed out all the workers. It's just, you can't make any money on these. So Lisa said something that is brilliant. She's quoting somebody. AI shouldn't be creating art or writing literature. It should be doing our dishes and laundry so we can create art and literature. That's actually pretty good. And then John said, I had a discussion with the state rep about green energy wind farms, and he kept saying it's their land and their right to do with what they want on it. When I brought up the word ethical,
yeah, well, that's about right. That's about right.
John, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, it's boy, I don't know. And I think the scariest thing was what we talked about, which is the fact that it's in all the curriculum. And you know what? We should bring that up to Kendra again in the next time we talk to Kendra. I'm pretty sure with Kendra as the chair of the textbook committee, we're not getting in a bunch of, goopy gunk about, climate change. But still in all, that is the way that this is going to perpetuate itself if we don't stop it. And that is by having it introduced into the curriculum and by feeding it to these kids that don't have the ability to parse that out and make some real have some real argument about it. And critically think it.
You're playing on people's emotions of goodness. Most people, I think, want to be good. They want to do the right thing.
And that's what happened with COVID.
They feel like, I'm helping save the earth because I'm driving an EV, or, they're not thinking about what did it take to create that car in the first place? What did it take to create those batteries? What's going to happen to those batteries? When it's, and I told you about that. I've been frantically searching for years that TED Talk video. Literally, the only TED Talk I've ever seen taken down was a guy did a comparison between a gas vehicle, a hybrid, and an EV. This was like 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago. He did a whole deal, had all the science. It was mind-blowing how the break-even point on the carbon capture, on the carbon break-even point on an EV is literally like 150 years. That's if you maintain one set of batteries. So the amount of energy and carbon and stuff that it took to build that, it'd take like 150 years, where a hybrid is literally like 4 or 5 years, something like that for a hybrid. Now gas vehicle, there's no real break even point on that because it's continuing to, emit carbon. But the EV side, that's what he was saying. He wore a shirt that said like EV's not the answer or something like that. I watched that video like 3 or 4 times. I saved it in my list. I should have downloaded it, but I didn't. Yeah. I saved it. Then it disappeared. It's literally disappeared from everything. I cannot find it. But it was a TED Talk from like 15 years ago. They don't want it out there.
I was going to mention something too. The fact that I don't think we do enough science in public education also too disturbs me, because when people, you've had people come out literally and call people liars who are talking about the whales washing up, and they're calling them liars and saying that's not even happening, or they're dying from something else. Well, I want to point something out. And you can look this up. I always tell you, look up what I say. Animals like whales and dolphins, all marine mammals, as a matter of fact, they not only communicate, but they geolocate by echolocation. And what echolocation is they ping, they make a little sound and they ping it, and it comes back, that pinging, what comes back to them comes back into they don't have ears like we do, but they have a similar type structure that we do because they're mammals just like we do. And they even have, I believe they even have cochlea and all of the ear parts. And so they make this little noise and it goes out and it hits something and it comes back and they hear it, they feel it. Well, so let me ask you this. What happens when some marine mammal goes into an area where there are a bunch of things going whap, 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 and their stands are doing this? No matter how much concrete and steel you put in there, they're still going to have some vibration. What do you think that would do to a marine mammal's echolocation?
Oh yeah, completely destroy it. And you know what? The one study they'll probably never show us, Jenny, because vibration really moves pretty quickly and goes pretty far in water. I mean,
Yes, it
it really goes a long way.
absolutely does.
Yeah, I'd like to see just a single wind turbine and see how far out they can measure that vibration. I bet you it's miles and miles and miles, hundreds of miles out there. I bet it goes.
I would absolutely agree, because that's the other way that whales and dolphins communicate, right? And get themselves back together and communicate where they are, because the sounds that they go so very far in the water that they can pick them up over miles away. So if you literally think somehow that those things that are vibrating and going flap, 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 flap aren't hurting things that echolocate and exist on vibrations in their head to determine where they are, you're an idiot. I'm just going to call you an idiot, because that's what you are. Robert said CBS News just did a green energy. Really? What? Did you hear me? I went, really? Like what? CBS News is going to do a propaganda piece. Climate change is causing farming to be unsustainable. So grandma had 3 turbines installed on her 160-acre farm, and it was generating her $35,000 a year. Robert, God love you for putting that in there, because that's the same thing that we're having told us here, and the same thing people like Invenergy and these lobbyists for these green wacky machines are talking about. They say, well, you're not going to be able to afford farming, so you better put these on and we'll give you money and that'll sustain you into your elderly years. Well, these people buy that stuff, but then everything that we're hearing about the contracts that they're signing, they may or they may not get paid from this. So you may sign up to get 3 windmills on your property and they tell you you're going to get 35 grand a year, but then in the end you may not. And he says, hope she keeps some of that back pay for the $600,000 to remove those turbines when they're abandoned in 10 to 12 years. Robert, I just did a thing on that the other day. And if you followed the news, Kimberly says, I think that's why we're seeing so many more. That's it. I'm positive that's why. Kimberly, you're exactly right. I'm positive that's why. They can't figure out where they are, so they end up going to the beach because they can't determine where they are. Oh shoot, what was I just saying?
I don't know.
Oh, here's a good comment on our Rumble channel from Flowerbeds, who said, hit the like button, please. She's reminding you to hit the like button, please. So I'm going to say that too. Well, on a small scale, drive a slotted rod in the ground and rub a stick in it, and it will bring earthworms up. I'd forgotten about that trick, but that's absolutely right, Flowerbeds. And so we've made Kimberly's point and my point right there. As an ex-Californian, ex-Solyndra employee spouse, ooh, wow, hybrid car owner and scuba diver, I agree with all you've said here. It's truth, whether or not somebody wants to believe it. So, I mean, wow, Lisa, I didn't realize you had all that going on for you. That's quite a bit. Very cool. What was I going to say? I was saying something before I squirreled.
I don't know. I will tell you while you're thinking about that.
Okay.
When I first moved down here to Oklahoma City, I was golf pro. I was out at Gaillardia and Quail Creek, and I remember when I was out at Gaillardia, one of the members out there, he was a huge farmer. I mean, owned thousands, tens of thousands of acres in Oklahoma, and he was kind of retired. And he moved out to Gaillardia, and he was just your classic good old farmer. I mean, just awesome guy. Spent a lot of time with him. But he was literally one of the first people that put, like, at a large scale, wind turbines out on his land.
Oh,
and I mean,
really?
He came in every day and he was so happy and so excited because he was getting, at that time, Jenny, and this is probably how they started selling this to all these guys. He was getting $8,000 a month per turbine himself. That's what
$8,000 a
Yep.
month.
This was back in like 2001, and he was one of the very first guys. And I mean, he was just talking it up to I mean, no matter where he went, he's like, "You've got to get these turbines on your land." I mean, I bet he was responsible for a ton of other farmers all over the state, because this guy was a big time farmer, and I just remember him. He was always coming in. He's like, "Michael, you got to get in this turbine business. You got to get out of golf business. You got to get over here. You got to do this. You need to do that." And he's like, "This is the most lucrative thing I've ever seen." And I mean, it was mind blowing.
Okay, I know what I was going to tell you, and I'm looking at that. Started looking it up while you were talking about it. $8,000. That's crazy. So if you don't know, and I can't find the article that I wanted to talk about, I think it's in my, remember we started doing the, let me pull this in so people can see. Gotta remove this or I'll get bogged down and not figure out what I'm doing. This is what I wanted to share. Okay, so if you'll notice on our homepage, we have a new feature, weekly news and headlines commentary. And so I've got a new one that's out there, but I think it might have been in the old one. Nancy McDaniel sent me this information, and it was really, see how you can join? You can be it's so easy. So subscribe to our newsletter. Please go to rope2.org and subscribe. Look how I did that. See, I worked it in. Here it is. It is. Okay. So here's a guy named Robert Bryce wrote an article on Substack. Osage Tribe wins again. Federal judge orders ejectment of 84 wind turbines by next December. While this is certainly a win for the Osage Tribe, we've been fighting this fight for years, This is also a spectacular win against wind energy, if for no other reason than this. Enel, the Italian wind energy company responsible for the turbines, has said that it would take $300 million to remove 84 turbines. So, Robert Scott, that's $3.6 million per turbine.
Wow.
So you just said 600,000. No, according to Enel,
6 times that.
It would be $3.2 million. So maybe people who are thinking about putting these things on their property might wonder where they're going to get $3.2 million to remove that sucker once it's up there. And that's each. That's not all of those windmills together. It's per windmill, $3.5 million.
Wow.
And what are you going to do? Are you going to sue the windmill people to come back in and take it out, themselves?
Well, probably an international company, or they're going to have international ties in some way. You can never go after somebody like that.
How are you going to do that? How? Now, the Osage did, but my goodness, the Osage have, they can take care of themselves. So they're fine. I did want to go back. Reagan said bats echolocate too, and we have brown bats. Remember, I told you that's what I did for my undergraduate program is I took urine from bats and studied them when they were in hibernation. And it was the brown bats in the northwestern part of the state. And so, yeah, I think that's hurting them too. Kimberly says you were talking about taking them down in 10 or 20 years. Who was? I hope not me. I want them all to come down right now. Why haven't environmentalists gotten these removed due to the harm it causes to endangered species? And that's the weird thing. That's what oh my gosh, I've had our guest just said. Peter, thank you. I was like, where's that name going? But that's what Peter said. I mean, where are these environmentalists? But then here's the other one. Where are all these feminists when you've got men going into girls' bathrooms and men beating girls on their own sports teams? Where are the feminists then? It's like these people come out and they yammer at you and they Karen you and then they run back under their little rock. It's just crazy. The little brown bat lives in Oklahoma. That's exactly right. I worked with them. Where is the Sierra Club? good point. It's going to end up being taxpayers paying the bill to have all these wind turbines removed. And you know what, John? I hate that, but I think you're probably right about it. We paid to put them up. Now they'll pay to remove them. And
well,
that's,
you know what we need to do? We need to literally catalog, Jenny. Like Peter was saying, we need to, show what's happening and get it out there. We literally need to just have picture after picture after picture of
Kim was doing what Kim was trying to help me remember what I was talking. Thank you, Kim. I need you to be my guide.
Well, we need to have just nothing but pictures of dead animals, dead eagles, dead bats, dead birds, all the everything that is in the environment that's affected. We just need to have picture after picture after picture and just show it. Literally just have like a slideshow, say, here you go, here's what's happening.
Yeah, I know your 100 flower bed said, love that rant. Well, but I mean, oh gosh, I just don't. I think the other thing that we might do, because Peter mentioned pretty much all of the things that we were doing, which is good. And I mean, I'd rather have somebody, say, hey, you're doing the right thing. So that's fine. But I think the other thing that he didn't mention, and the thing that I really want everybody who's on here right now to deeply consider, if you have young people that are in your circle, deprogram them from this nonsense. Really legitimately take the time to do that. Don't think somebody else is going to do it. Don't think that maybe even their parents might do it. And I'm not saying grabbing them and talk them away from what their parents are saying. We don't believe that here. But what I'm saying is, you could have a conversation where you inject some of this stuff and say, well, did you know that marine mammals echolocate? Well, what do you suppose that, that sound is doing to them under the water, and that kind of thing. And I really, really think, because of the fact that they're getting a different message on social media from their influencers, from all the people in Hollywood that so many of these kids pay attention to, they're getting it in their curriculum. They're getting it from so many different directions. If some of us who are wise, who have people, younger kids in our circle, would just explain this to them, I think it would really go a long way. Like Peter said, he did, remember, in Davos, remember? And he was like talking to those young girls, and they were like, oh my God, that makes me feel so much better. Well, let's do that. Let's add that to our list of things that we have to do to get rid of this crap in Oklahoma.
And we saw during COVID, look how much money the government paid all these influencers to peddle all that information. It's the same thing with all this green everything. It's the exact same thing. All these people are getting paid in one way or another to promote whatever it is. I mean, that just shows you how powerful social media is in the first place. And Robert was right. We need to have some social media presence when we go in to talk to one of these legislators in one way or another.
Well, and Kim says critical thinking, that's not allowed in school anymore.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the thing that they pushed Common Core on is it's going to allow kids to critically think. And I was like, no, do you read what you write in these things? It's telling them what to think. That's not critical thinking. Telling them what to think isn't critical thinking. Critical thinking is doing what I just said a minute ago about the whales. That's critical thinking. Ask them what they think.
Yeah. Well, we think about this, Jenny. We know how much critical thinking has actually kind of gone down the tubes, but think of the acceleration now with AI, where these kids can literally, and I know Lauren sent you some of those videos where you can literally put in 2 or 3 things, or you can have a sentence. You can let AI give you the synopsis, give you a review, write your paper, do the whole 9 yards. And I mean, that's just another thing that's coming. Our thought process is getting ready to be usurped by AI. And I hate to be such an AI Debbie Downer, because yes, I would like AI to do the dishes for my wife instead of my wife having to go do dishes. No doubt about that. I'd like to give her more free time to be a mom, to do all the things that she needs to do. But at the end of the day, is it really going to stop there? No, it's never going to. It's going to be total replacement, in my opinion, in one way or another.
So Flowerbed says it's okay to be the crazy mama. I love flower beds. That's great. But Lisa said, Jenny, there is hope. Reagan, her daughter, is a fierce fighter against all this garbage. She attends Bible study with young adults who are against it too. They're not fooled and they're not being silent. And that's great. Honestly,
Yeah.
Lisa, that does make me feel better, because I think all of us at some point do kind of feel like you're just banging your head against the desk going, why isn't somebody not understanding how stupid this is? And then it just doesn't factually make any sense when you look at it. I don't,
Yeah.
but the other part of the problem is we don't allow discussion about it. We just don't allow discussion about it. And I think the reason why we're not allowed discussion about it is because if you discussed it like we do here, people would go, oh yeah, I guess when you put it that way, it sort of doesn't make that much sense, right?
Yeah.
I think that's why they shut down discussion. But the important thing is to have discussion. And, we probably need to get off of here because it's already 1:46. But I will say this. We've got to have discussions with our legislators. And if they're willing to talk to us, talk back. I mean, I talked to a couple of them yesterday on the phone myself. So if they're willing to talk, let them talk back, and you have a discussion, because that's the only way they're going to learn anything. Because as I told one of them yesterday, it's an echo chamber. I mean, once you leave and you go to that building, it becomes an echo chamber. And
Well, it's going to be tough. Well, it's going to be tough, Jenny, because the GOB, just like in the video you showed, we're good old boys club, not GOP. Where you showed, like Jim Shaw, look how they were attacking him. Look what they were doing to Gann. I mean, we're going to have to overcome that. I mean, I hope guys like that just keep going and don't, give up, because we almost need to be able to film more of those things closer, close up, see the facial reactions, watch a guy, rolling his eyes or laughing or, doing whatever when they're shutting someone like Jim down or Tom down or something like that. We really need to expose that.
Well, and I completely agree. And we were talking about maybe, going out to the Capitol on Wednesdays for a live, but, then I don't know. We need to kind of discuss that, because I'm not sure how we could manage to do that.
I mean, it's going to take, we're going to need some help from some people to be down there.
No, there's no question about it. I was saying that in several of our group chats the other day. We've got to start organizing into groups where, even two people maybe go, a day and film or, whatever. But if we don't get some eyes down there on a regular basis, it's going to catch up to us. Although I will say, I have stayed home several days and just watched everything on the Senate webpage or the House webpage. And you can do that. And I'm okay with, people doing that. But I do think more than anything, they have to see faces being there with with the peepers watching them. I think
like a perfect example, no one would have known anything about what happened to Jim and Tom if you weren't down there filming that, because everyone else left. No one else was there. No other mainstream media was there talking about that.
Dorn and Kim were there with me. They were there, but it was just about it. It was me, Dorn and Kim, Senator Jett, Mike Reynolds, and some other lady and another guy, and that was it.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to have some more of that. Unfortunately, I mean, that's the only way to expose these people. We're gonna have to just do it.
Well, and I'm going to put together, I've got an interview with Molly Jenkins, and I have an interview with Jim Shaw that I'm going to put together hopefully today and get up as something that I'm going to put out. And I want people to watch that, because if we're going into the House legislative, if we're going into legislative session and we've got a guy who's the speaker, who's 30 years old, who has never been in any kind of business other than government, who invented a position for a representative
Yeah.
who is an attorney
Yeah.
who was happy to tell everybody, even the New York Times, that he collected dark money to get rid of all but 2 conservatives in 2018, and he was happy to do that. Then you have the floor leader, Josh West, who assaulted Mike Ritz, Dr. Mike Ritz, who was in the 2018 purge, by the way, outside in the hallway because they accused him of stolen valor, and Josh West actually physically assaulted him. So if you've got those people and those are the people who you're going to for advice, I don't see how we're starting out on a good foot.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't see it.
Well, oh heck, we had her on the show multiple times. She's got the breakdown of the dark money. I can't think of her name.
I actually saw her that day, and now you made me forget her name too.
Yeah. I can't believe I can't remember her name, but anyway, didn't she have a breakdown just of Chris?
Yeah, yes. She had a breakdown just of Chris, and we can go to her website, which is carmengreider.com.
Yeah, Carmen. Dang it. I could not think of Carmen's first name.
Oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. Because when I saw Carmen at the house on Tuesday, I knew exactly who she was, and I got to see her baby. She's so cute.
Oh yeah.
Yes, go to carmengreider.com and you can see some of those breakdowns. All right, well, we probably need to get off of here for the day because we've kept people busy, but I want to close with a couple of things. Lisa said, which cracks me up, we all thought AI was going to be Rosie from the Jetsons doing our housework. I sometimes there was a time when Rosie, I think she had a boyfriend, like a robot boyfriend, and something happened to the robot boyfriend and she was depressed and she'd go around and go like that. And I still do that to the kids, but the kids don't even know who Jetsons are. John says the establishment needs to be removed, which is 150% on that. And Lisa says, love me some Carmen. Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I think that's about good for today. We bashed we bashed global warming and the green agenda pretty well today, and we do appreciate all your support. We had quite a bunch of people on today. Flower Beds, thank you she says, thank you, folks. And I said, thank you. And you may be a man. I don't know. So I hope, don't want to be offensive. Thank you, Flower Beds. We appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We do appreciate you, all of you. We definitely do. But let me point out, if you have not watched the video that I did the other day from Tuesday, please watch it. It's on all of our channels now, including Rumble. I uploaded it the other day. But more than watching it, please share it. Please share it even with your legislators, maybe, who haven't really thought about what's going on in the House. Share that, because that's the only way to kind of let people know what's going on. So I thank you. And Michael, who do we have on for next week?
I don't know. I don't know who's coming on.
You should memorize this. Hang on, I can tell you. If I can find it on the proper page in my calendar. Here we go. All right. Our friend Kendall Sacchieri, who is now a state senator, is going to be on, and she's going to talk to us. You guys, be on next Wednesday. She's going to talk to us about property taxes. You know, Representative Jay Stiegel came on and he talked to us about property taxes, and he's got an income tax bill that he's trying to get passed for this upcoming session. And we do need to watch that. But Kendall's going to tell us a few things about property taxes that you may not know and explain even more about that. So if you want to get rid of property taxes, the key to doing that is to knowing exactly what we need to know to get that done. And I think Kendall's going to help us a lot there, because don't forget, she was a county assessor before she became a state senator. So very important. Then on the 17th, I'm not sure, I've got to check up with him and we'll see, but I think we're going to have Mason Alexander from Second Look, Oklahoma, talk about incarceration rates in our state and about some of the things that are going on with incarcerations. And I think that would be an interesting topic. I just need to make sure that he's going to be coming on. So that's what we got for next week. And you guys have a safe and maybe somewhat snowy weekend.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. And hopefully your kids won't be out again until 11 o'clock being in the snow, Michael.
Well, they probably will be.
That's so cute. All right, everybody. You have a great weekend, and we will see you again next week. Thank you so much for tuning in and for your support. We really appreciate that. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.